For the first time ever, an Arab state will host the FIFA World Cup. Qatar plays host to the 2022 edition of the tournament, and it has already set an astonishing record as the most expensive World Cup to date. Qatar has had 12 long years to prepare for the arrival of the prestigious event. From the looks of it, the country has spent all that time ensuring the proper accommodation and infrastructure are in place to host the World Cup. So where exactly did Qatar spend an estimated $220 billion to make the 2022 World Cup the most expensive of all time? Qatar was awarded 2022 World Cup rights on December 2, 2010. The country bested the likes of South Korea, Japan, Australia, and the United States with its World Cup bid. Qatar positioned itself as a representative of the Arab world in its bid, which garnered the support of neighboring states. The announcement meant that Qatar would be the first Arab country where the World Cup would be held, as well as the smallest country where it'll take place. Although this was a milestone for Qatar, it was not without controversy. There have been accusations of bribery to ensure the country won the World Cup rights for 2022. In 2011, FIFA's former vice president claimed that the Asian Football Confederation's president at the time, Mohammed bin Hammam, essentially purchased the rights to the World Cup. This claim was expounded in 2014 when the Sunday Times reported that Mohammed bin Hammam paid $5 million to football officials in exchange for supporting Qatar's bid. FIFA's president at the time, Sepp Blatter, cleared Qatar of the allegations. However, in 2015, he resigned while Swiss officials investigated the 2022 World Cup bids, merely days after successfully being re-elected. Blatter was eventually charged with criminal fraud and was just acquitted last July. In 2019, it was reported by the Sunday Times that Al Jazeera will pay around $880 million to FIFA if Qatar won the bid. The following year, 3 South American FIFA officials were officially indicted by the U.S. Department of Justice for receiving bribes. Despite these allegations over the years, Qatar has maintained that they are innocent. It's also notable that much of the country's criticism comes from Western media outlets. Aside from a corrupt bid, the West has criticized Qatar for its social and cultural norms and labor policies. Nonetheless, Qatar was committed to making the 2022 World Cup a memorable one. To that end, they poured in billions of dollars to prepare for the historic event. The country is one of the world's richest due to having one of the largest petroleum reserves worldwide. That meant Qatar had no problem spending $500 million a week for years to transform itself into a region befitting the World Cup, according to the country's Minister of Finance. All in all, Qatar spent around $220 to $229 billion on the World Cup. However, this hasn't been confirmed by tournament officials. This amount is more than 16 times the amount Russia spent when it hosted the World Cup in 2018. Qatar invested this huge sum in the country's infrastructure and transportation. The tournament is expected to bring 1.5 million visitors to the country, so it had to be prepared for them in time. Let's take a look at where the $200 billion went. Before hosting the World Cup, Qatar invested heavily in European football. Qatar invested $163 million in sponsoring FC Barcelona in December 2010. The Emir of Qatar, Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, purchased Paris Saint-Germain through Qatar Sports Investments for $70 million. The Qatari sports channel beIN Sports also began showing European football matches. All this was done to build the country's football reputation ahead of the World Cup. With enough clout, eventually Qatar hosted qualifying matches between the UEFA member teams for the prestigious tournament. The World Cup games will be played in 8 stadiums: Al Bayt Stadium, Lusail Stadium, Ahmed bin Ali Stadium, Al Janoub Stadium, Al Thumama Stadium, Education City Stadium, Khalifa International Stadium, and Stadium 974. The largest of them, Lusail Stadium, has a seating capacity of 80,000 and is where the tournament final will be held. 7 of these 8 stadiums started construction after Qatar won the World Cup rights in 2010. Ahmed bin Ali Stadium was reconstructed in 2016 after the original stadium was demolished the previous year, while Khalifa International Stadium has existed since 1976. Stadium 974 was assembled from 974 shipping containers, hence the name, and is the first World Cup stadium that is completely detachable. In total, Qatar spent an estimated $6.5 to $10 billion to construct 7 stadiums for the international tournament. Al Bayt Stadium is the most expensive one, costing $847 million, but this is actually a modest figure compared to stadiums in the US. All stadiums are located within 31 miles of the Doha Corniche. This is a departure from previous tournaments where games are held in different cities across the hosting country. But because Qatar is a small country, and since Doha is not only Qatar's capital, but where most of its population resides, the stadiums are built within close proximity to each other. While the stadiums are obviously important for hosting the World Cup games, they are not Qatar's biggest investment for the tournament. That title goes to the construction of Lusail City, which cost around $45 billion. Yes, the country poured money to build an entire city for the World Cup. It's the second largest city in Qatar and is on its way to become a futuristic megalopolis like Doha. If there's any proof of Lusail City's potential, just look at the iconic Qatar Towers, which finished construction this year. The city has a long way to go before it's completed, but it already has residential and commercial buildings, hotels, a marina, and of course the namesake stadium. Once completed, the city is projected to have a population of 200,000 people. As it stands now, Lusail City is ready to accommodate a huge number of fans for the World Cup. Although Lusail City has hotels where fans can stay during the tournament, most will still have to set their eyes on Doha as the place to go. After all, it's the country's capital, the more established city, and the center around which the stadiums are built. Expecting millions to arrive in Doha during the World Cup season, Qatar invested vast amounts in improving the city. New roads and hotels were constructed to accommodate visitors in the city. The most prominent of these new projects is the Pearl Qatar, a man-made island that's located north of central Doha and near the popular West Bay district. The $15 billion project features a slew of luxury hotels, residential towers, shopping complexes, high-end restaurants, marinas, and other leisurely facilities. Another project that will attract visitors is the Sharib downtown Doha, which costs $5.5 billion. It's being touted as the first regeneration project of its kind. This development will feature office spaces, shops, upscale residential complexes, museums, and entertainment venues across 310 square meters of land. It will also incorporate smart living features into its facilities. Qatar also spent heavily on the country's transportation services to ensure that traveling into and across the country during the World Cup is as smooth sailing as possible. In fact, the government's second most investment after Lusail City is the Doha Metro. The Rapid Transit project, which stretches 76 kilometers across 3 lines and 37 stations, cost a staggering $36 billion. The metro system opened in May 2019 and is designed to go through all World Cup stadiums, providing fans with a fast and convenient public transit system to catch the games. The country also commissioned the construction of Hamad International Airport for $15.5 billion. Boasting a land area of more than 22 square meters, the airport is set to replace Doha International as the country's main international airport. It's also 12 times the size of the original airport and 2/3 the size of Doha. It can accommodate up to 53 million passengers as of 2020. Qatar also spent $7.4 billion on the new Doha Port project. Located in Masjid, the port occupies 26.5 square kilometers and features 3 container terminals with a combined capacity of 6 million containers per year. It's projected to be one of the region's biggest seaports and will be completed after the World Cup. These projects show that Qatar has the buying power to make up for its small geographical size. But infrastructure isn't the only thing the Arab country is spending on. Qatar got a lot of ambassadors to promote the 2022 World Cup. These included football icons such as Tim Cahill, Xavi, Cafu, Ronald de Boer. They also got managers such as Pep Guardiola, Sir Alex Ferguson, and Zidane to back their bid. The latter was reportedly paid $15 million for supporting the Qatari bid for the World Cup. Qatar also paid a very handsome amount to the equally handsome football legend, David Beckham, to be an ambassador for the 2022 World Cup. Beckham will reportedly receive $227 million for his role, which will reportedly be paid in installments over a 10-year period. Not a bad payday for the former England captain. However, his role as ambassador has been criticized by numerous groups, in particular the LGBTQ community. Beckham is a known supporter of the LGBTQ rights, and the community viewed his decision to represent Qatar in the World Cup unfavorably. Given that Qatari law still outlaws homosexuality, And this is just one of the issues that Qatar is being criticized for. It can be said that the 2022 World Cup was a vehicle used by Qatar to accelerate its national development projects. Many infrastructure costs attributed to the World Cup are set to be long-term projects scheduled to be completed after the tournament. Qatar hopes to elevate its status among its neighbors by hosting the World Cup. The country was involved in a conflict against the UAE, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Bahrain in 2017 when they were accused of funding terrorists. It was only settled when the United States stepped in. The international reputation that a small country like Qatar can get from hosting the World Cup may prevent similar situations from happening in the future. Also, the country stands to win as Europe's primary energy source in the middle of the crisis between Russia and Ukraine. Qatar has stated that it will stand in solidarity with Europe and keep providing the region with natural gas. The country's officials are banking on the idea that their non-energy businesses will also benefit from the international investment. By giving worldwide coverage that will show their country in all its glory, Qatar hopes to become a global business, tourism, and sports hub. The country is also scrutinized for how it treats its workers who built the World Cup project. Most were migrant workers from places such as Bangladesh, Nepal, India, and the Philippines. Many reported being paid a minimum of $1 per hour to work 12-hour shifts or more. They were also expected to work through the scorching heat of the summer season, where temperatures can go up to 43 degrees Celsius. Rushing to beat deadlines under harsh conditions also affected their health, leading to a number of deaths. Criticism worldwide pressured Qatar to revise its labor policies leading to the World Cup. One change was the minimum monthly wage, which was increased to about $275, but this did little to stop calls for boycotts of the tournament. It also failed to reverse the 16% drop in sponsorship the World Cup received this year, compared to the 2018 edition. The 2022 World Cup incurred not just financial costs, but high human costs as well. And for better or worse, all these prove that the 2022 World Cup is the most expensive one in its entire 90-year history. What do you think of Qatar's expenses for the 2022 World Cup? All things considered, will these huge investments pay off in the end? Share your thoughts in the comments section. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel.